Good morning. I'd like to call the March 21st, 2017 Community Services Committee meeting to order. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Seroy,
Present.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Stauffenberg, Mr. Vickery, Mr. Tholen, Ms. Polk, Mr. Snipes, Ms. Evans, Mr. Payton, Ms. Peters, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Dunbar, Ms. Parker, Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Lear. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment today? Does anyone have any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the February 21st minutes. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Parker. Thank you. First up today is a recorder, Lori Gadbois. Oh, yes, Mr. Johnson. Sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, a voice vote. Voice vote. All in favor? Thank you. The recorder, Lori Gadbois.
Good morning.
Good morning. Motion to accept the recorder's report. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Dunbar.
Morning. Any questions on the report at all?
Do we need all in favor of that? Which three? Okay. All in favor to accept the report? Aye. Opposed, same sign. None. All right. Move along.
Awesome.
Move along.
Very good. A couple things I just want to update you on. First of all, last month, the state's attorney and I hosted a financial and property fraud. Yeah, it was like a workshop. It was a meeting with the stakeholders of the county, the realtors, the title companies, some of the local banks, just talking about some of the issues that are before us: financial fraud, phone scams, and property fraud. I believe many of you are aware of the free property fraud alert system I have in my office. So it was something we introduced again to these stakeholders, and the partnership has already exploded. It's awesome. Title companies and banks are actually at the table now helping promote the property fraud and getting people signed up so that they're more in tune to what's going on and have a handle on keeping an eye on their property one more way. So that's pretty exciting. We are going to be continuing this. It'll be a quarterly type meeting we're going to have and bringing things to the forefront so that they're aware and they're the frontline people working with our constituents. So keeping them in tune to what is a scam, what's going on, how to prevent it, or how to attack it when it happens. So that was pretty exciting. The other thing is, on Thursday of this week, House Bill 3036 is in the Counties and Townships committee meeting. Speaking with Representative Walsh, he is very confident this bill is going to go to the House. It will come out of committee this week. There was a slight rewrite. The realtors had expressed some concerns about just some specific language, which we complied to and made those changes. So those were introduced to them yesterday, and we've gotten a nod of acceptance. So everything is moving forward. Representative Hellbrook has signed on as a chief co-sponsor of the bill, and we're pretty excited about the movement on this.
Questions for Mrs. Gadbois? Lori, what's the timeline for that House Bill 3036?
Goes to the House, we'll have a vote. Goes to the Senate, we'll have a vote. Goes to the governor for signature.
You think 30, 60 days, 70 days, 80 days?
I can give an idea for the House and Senate. I cannot for the governor. Historically speaking, once things come out of the chambers, we can push, we can ask, we can request. So there'll be no grandeur. There'll be no, bells and whistles going off when he signs. But we have a pretty good pulse on it.
Okay.
We have very, very good partnerships and cooperation from every aspect of government working with us on this. So.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Gadbois? Seeing none, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Next up is Assessor, Mr. Blair. I need a motion to accept his report, Ms. Peters. Mr. Snipes. All in favor? Opposed?
That's all right. We're good.
Report accepted.
We're gonna do a little rearranging here. For
Sure. Make sure we get him on camera.
I wasn't ready for my close-up yet. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
All right.
Morning, Eric.
Morning, folks. Do have a couple of things to go over with you this morning. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Last month, I know I'll start with a staffing replacement update. I wanted to let you know that I was able to go through the interviewing process. We vetted several candidates, and I did make a decision. And that person did start on March 13th. So he's already a part of our office, and we're really pleased with the progress that he's made in the last week and a half or so here. I have no doubt that he can handle the mapping aspect that we've placed upon him, and as far as interactions with the public and things, and knowing the types of questions that we receive on a continuum, that's just a matter of repetition, and I'm sure he'll adapt just fine to that. So we're really pleased to have Colin aboard. And the other thing I wanted to update you on this morning is the idea that there have been some rumblings of solar energy projects within the county, and given that there is no statutory guidelines on how to value such a project, I've kind of taken on the task of getting together with or assembling some sort of a committee with my peers to try to uniformly find a way to assess these types of projects. And what I found was LaSalle County has a methodology that they already use to split out what is real property and what is personal property in that project. And in lieu of any statutory guidelines, I would lean on that heavily to be able to put that on the tax roll for us should we have any solar projects come into our county and officially construct a project. I feel like going through this process in the last few weeks has put me in a position where I feel like we are well equipped to be able to handle the assessment portion of a project like that. So wanted to let you know that I'm kind of taking a little bit of a leadership role with my peers and trying to get us together to have some uniform standards of practices on how we put those on the tax roll, so that it's not so, I want to make sure it's done uniformly and we don't have certain counties doing things differently than others. That's going to be something that I think will be beneficial statewide, but also to our county as we field more and more interest in this type of renewable energy project. So I wanted to bring you up to date on that. Also, just some things that are pending still from last month. I've been in contact with the Department of Revenue about reconciling our sales ratio study, but they do seem to be a little slowed in the last few weeks on handling those things. I don't know if it's a budgetary issue or staffing level issue, but I'm sure we'll be able to get that taken care of as soon as they get it to me. We'll make sure it gets back out very, very quickly. And as I stated last month, the farmland portion of things that I'm talking about, I wouldn't get the new certified PI values until the end of April anyway. It was sort of on my list last month as something pending, and it's on there again. We'll have a farmland assessment review committee sometime probably in early June to make sure that we have that approved. We're going to use those values, those PI values per acre for the 2018 assessment year. So that kind of brings you up to speed on what I've been working on here in the last few weeks. I'd open the floor at this point to any questions that may come out.
Any questions? Mr. Lear first, Mr. Stauffenberg second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the solar energy and the assessment practices in LaSalle County, are the stakeholders that would be interested there in the local county comfortable with what has been the procedures and assessment practices they've settled?
The procedures that are used in LaSalle County, I believe, are well. First of all, it's really the only process that is in place throughout the state. I do think it is a beneficial way to put it on the tax roll. I did ask some questions of the commercial appraiser that performed the valuation procedure in that regard, and he said that it was a procedure that left them in a good standing as far as not really jeopardizing any value at property tax appeal board and things like that. They sat down with the company itself, and everybody was comfortable with the direction that was headed, and I think the county was supportive of that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Stauffenberg.
Thank you, Chairman. Eric, there's been a lot of farmers contacted by these companies, and several have come in to see us to see what it's going to do for their insurance purposes. But
Sure.
we've been contacted too, and my concern is what does it do to the value of the farmland, because they're offering really high cash rents.
Sure.
They don't own it, but obviously they're renting it, and our tax basis comes off of corn and beans markets eventually
Sure.
for farmland. So how do you calculate these kind of high cash rents, I wonder,
Well,
and what it'll do to the landowner himself as far as his tax base?
when the solar energy project, if it were to be constructed on, let's say, a 80-acre tract of land or something maybe even a little bit bigger. I mean, the one in LaSalle is a 160-acre project that's a total of 20 megawatts. At that point, it stops being assessed as farmland, that preferential assessment of farmland, and we would put a commercial industrial type value on the land. Because you're no longer able to farm it while the solar panels and the racks and things are on the property. So it would increase the value of the land itself because it's no longer in that farmland preferential assessment.
So in that case, then the farmer should beware of the fact that his taxes are really going to go up compared to what they are now, and that $1,000 an acre that they're offering as cash rent goes down all of a sudden.
That could very well be a true statement, yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I've had several questions about it myself, and the company that contacted us wanted at least 200 acres.
Sure. Well, and they've been a little aloof, as I've talked to a couple of the companies, and I've asked them about site size, and they said somewhere between 20 and 200 acres. Asked them about the scope of the project as far as megawatts, and they would say somewhere between 2 and 20 megawatts. So until they're able to pin down exactly, in at least a little bit more refined terms, it's hard for me to discuss with them what's going to happen in terms of the valuation. But I do have, like I said, I have a procedure that I think will work for us until potentially, if you think about the way that the wind energy projects are assessed, it's done with a formulated value. And I'm wondering if the state is going to go that way with with solar energy projects. But in lieu of that type of formula, we have to have some way of putting it on the rolls.
Sure.
And I'm comfortable with the way that LaSalle County has done it. It's also been copied, that methodology in in Joe Davies County. So I know that it's been done in a few different places as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Stoffenberg, I think you can farm the sun, though, 12 months out of the year and not just 4 or 5 months out of the year. So it might be a win-win for everybody if that might happen. So, Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, I overheard where there was concern with the taxes, but I'm thinking that if they're offering them something, they're in the conversation of negotiations, and if that's the case, then they need to factor in that or incorporate those taxes in their conversation if it was to be changed from farmland to commercial. I'm sure there would be there's some index of taxes that would be proposed if it was raised to that degree. So therefore, I would not be engaged into a transaction where my expenses would exceed my revenue. So I'm certainly I don't know what they did this time, but I'm certain that those conversations have been held if it's at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But I think at this point, we're pretty early on in the process. I mean, I wouldn't be the one to speak on this. I think Delbert Skimmerhorn would be able to talk a little bit more eloquently about it. But I don't think we're at a stage yet where they're quite ready to commit to anything. I think they've just reached out to landowners to feel out the process of potentially leasing the land, and the negotiations would be ongoing from there.
Right.
But I think that's a little bit more off in the future.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of interject that, because if they see this, that if they have that conversation, that they need to probably consider that even though they might be in the pilot stages, if they don't consider it, it could be a horror story in the end stages. So that is something else that they can add to their conversation when they're having these negotiation talks, whenever it happens.
Absolutely, that's a good point.
Any other questions for Mr. Blair? All right, Eric, you're off the hook. Have a good day.
Have a great day, guys. Thanks a lot.
Next on the agenda is animal control. Mrs. Boudreau. Could I get a motion to accept her report? Mr. Johnson, Ms. Evans, all in favor? All opposed? Report accepted. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Nice long copy. Are there, first of all, any questions on the report this morning? Sally has one. Sally had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm concentrating on the paperwork, Mrs. Evans. Yes. Let me get you.
I don't know, I guess I probably haven't paid any attention to it before, but the wildlife, there was one for the month of February. What is typically wildlife, or what in this case was that you?
And
in the wildlife category.
I'm trying to think of the one that we transferred. Usually when we're transferring them, they tend to be the hawks, owls. Just Saturday, my officer was called out. I don't recall the location, but I think it was west, for a baby great horned owlet that had probably fallen from a nest. It was still white and fuzzy and adorable, and there was no nest that anybody could determine. So we will respond to those calls, and we work with Flint Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. They usually come for our big birds of prey. Those are usually the wildlife that we tend to encounter and send on to rescue. Other wildlife that you will often see sometimes in our euthanasia numbers are raccoons, possums, occasionally bats probably are a bigger one. And we're only handling them if there's a threat or pose a threat to public safety, a bat in a house, or if you've got a raccoon or possum out there that's sick or injured, maybe it's gotten hit by a car, maybe distemper is pretty prevalent in the raccoons, and it is contagious to dogs. And oftentimes you'll see that raccoon out bumbling around in the daytime when they shouldn't be. And we got a call yesterday on one, and a child, I think the curiosity of kids, they want to go investigate. So, you know, it's important that we get there and get those animals off the streets. That's the general wildlife that we deal with.
You generally test the bat when you do them?
If they've if there's been human exposure, if you see a bat fly in your window and fly back out, there's no real exposure. If you wake up and there's a bat in your house and you don't know how long it's been there, especially in your bedroom, they're going to want it caught and tested, because the bite is so tiny, you may not even know that it's bitten you in your sleep. And bats are the #1 rabies carrier in Illinois. We had, I believe, 3 last year. So we take it pretty seriously, and we do test those.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a few things on the agenda this morning. I'll try not to take up too much of your time. And I guess before I get started on that, I just to let you know our numbers, you know, they vary from month to month. And I do put the animal inventory on my reports, how many were started with at the beginning of the month, how many we've ended with. I'm going to jump a little bit ahead to March, and I realize I'm not reporting on March, but it's March 21st, and it's been a very, very busy month. We've been assisting with a cat situation, and just Friday we had another criminal situation. So since the 1st of March, just to give you guys an idea of just how fast we've been running this month, since the 1st of March, including the cats that we previously had, we've taken in 81 cats, and we've transferred 95. So on top of the 81 we've taken in, plus some of those that we had prior to March, I'm really proud of the partnerships that we have with other shelters. Without those partnerships, we would have not been able to do this. So we're really excited to report those numbers. Excuse me. And then a couple other cases that we've got that I can't really talk a lot about because they involve potentially some criminal aspects. But there were 23 taken in from one case and 2 from another. And hopefully I'm confident with working with the state's attorney's office that we'll be able to get justice for these animals.
The mild winter has shown in the cat.
I hope it's not a indication of things to come. So I've got a few things on the agenda. Trying to figure out where I should start first.
We have the bellwether fee study.
On the fee study, the bellwether fee study indicated there were several fees that came in under the needs or the actual cost to the department. And while this is not hitting all of those, working with the Assistant State's Attorney Graham, we've kind of started opening up the entire ordinance and working on different things. So this is what I've brought forward today. Our rabies fees, they really haven't been increased since September of 1996. I know that date because I was working in an animal hospital at the time, and I specifically remember September 1996. And that was when tag fees went up from like $4 to the $10. And I think when they gave a differential from altered to unaltered. So I am here today to propose an increase in conjunction. It's not quite as high as Bellwether study indicated, but I don't think we necessarily need to go to the very top on that. And I've got the current fee structure there and a proposed increase of $5 to the 1 year, $10 to the 3 year altered. And I kind of break them up that way, altered and unaltered. And then $10 on the unaltered. And it's a pretty good jump for that 3 year unaltered. However, it's still cheaper if you're instead of paying it every year as opposed and $10 of the unaltered goes into a population control fund, which helps us spay and neuter animals in the shelter, helps with low income spay and neuters, and so that gets directed to population control. The board fees, I can tell you in the 17 years that I've been there, the current board fee of $10 a day for the average animal has not gone up. We did implement the $20 rabies observation board fee. I am proposing that we increase that by $5. And so that would be $15 a day for your average board. And that still comes under probably what the average board fee is for private organizations. And $25 to deal with the rabies observation. We're seeing more and more animal hospitals not wanting to house these rabies observation animals. And, certainly it's a challenge, especially under the shelter that we work out of. We've got to handle those animals. There's certainly risk there. We hope that these fees would help encourage people to stay in compliance, because then that opportunity of, if your animal misbehaves, they'd be able to do a quarantine at home and save quite a bit of money on that. And then the adoption fees, we've always prided ourselves on trying to keep our adoption fees low. We make nothing on adoptions. We probably lose money on every adoption, and we're okay with that. We're really focusing on moving more and more animals onto our shelter partners and really concentrating less and less on trying to adopt them out ourselves. And we're real happy, again, to have those partnerships. But something that we've not been able to do in the past was ensure that every dog and cat got spayed and neutered prior to being released or going to a new home. That's crucial. It's important. Under state law, I think that's best practice. Under state law, you can also do a voucher. If you cannot get that done, it gives the individual 30 days in which to do it. And oftentimes that's what we do. And we give them a portion of their adoption fee back to offset that cost. And then we have to follow up with them. Right now we have one turned it into the state's attorney where the people didn't do it and they're out of town. And so, that's really hard. They're in violation of their contract. So we're trying to go after them on that. Just for compliancy is all we want. So another portion of the adoption that we haven't always had the privilege to do is certain testing for the animals, heartworm testing for dogs. If you do that on everybody, it gets costly. FELV, FIV testing for the adult cats. So the increases that I propose on the adoption fees will just help us provide the additional medical testing that I think is important for the animals and help provide the ability to get them spayed and neutered prior to going home. So that current fees are $100 for dogs, $70 for cats, and I propose an increase of $150 for dogs and $125 for cats. But then that would be all inclusive, and your new adopters wouldn't have to worry about going and spending additional monies. The current voucher that we give them, we give $60 for a dog and $30 for a cat. And if they take that to one of the local animal hospitals, they're still spending an additional amount on top of that to the hospitals. Most of the hospitals don't do it for that voucher price. So that's my goals on the fee increases for today.
Any questions on the fee increase, Mr. Wheeler? Hold on, Mr. Wheeler. Let me get you. 13?
11. 11.
11. I got 11. All right.
Goes
You're
to
on.
11. Thank you. I'm just trying to go through here. You chose not to include some of the fees, I guess, and that's why I was wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about the ones you didn't choose to increase.
Impoundment was one that I think by the Bellwether study, they indicated that we were under it, but I feel like that $25 impoundment, because there's so many other fees that get accumulated to redeeming your animal, our redemption fees can quickly grow. And I didn't feel comfortable with raising that amount of $25. I guess I would rather see the increase for the board and the caring for them rather than the administrative part of the intake as far as impoundment on them.
Did you see it as an impediment for people to be able to come back and pick up their animals? Is that where you're going with this? Or?
Very possibly. I'm not trying to increase fees so that people can't redeem their animals,
Right.
but we do want to properly care for them. I know as a government agency, we're not here to make money, but we do have to support ourselves. And as we are all very aware, everything that we're working with over at our poor little broken down shelter, it's a struggle. And so we're trying to do the very best we can for these animals while they're in our care.
Sure.
And we didn't go on to the village billing. I'm still hoping to work in other avenues of contracts with villages as opposed to increasing their fees at this time.
Is there any others that you want to discuss that were part of the ones that weren't going to be? 'Cause there's a few,
Yeah,
I'm
there
trying to
are a
get that.
few, and these Graham and I started with just a few of them that we thought were important, and maybe just as an easy start as we start to go through these, and not to necessarily kind of bombard the committee and the department and the citizens with everything all at once. So this was our starting point.
Just the only reason I ask is because when you look at a cost in 2012 or the fee of $25 and the actual cost is $20 more than that.
On the impoundment?
And things like that throughout. And I'm not saying you chose a bad path. It makes it hard for us to enter those municipalities and incur extra costs to do the work we need to do in there without having a fee structure to support some of that stuff. So as the public asks us to get more involved and do more things where we don't necessarily, I want to say, have the purview to do so, there needs to be funds behind that to actually pay for that activity. And that's the only reason I bring it up. So maybe we could take a look at those at another date to come back and kind of reassess some of the ones that we've left out.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
happy to come back, next month and talk about increasing some of the other fees.
Sure. As again, with the express point that this isn't a profit center. This is enable us to do the job we currently do and then do it even better.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We don't want to lose money on performing our services, but we want to at least break even.
We've got to be able to support the services,
Right.
that we want to provide, and we want to do a good job. Those jobs, not only are they, just providing the shelter, the vehicle, the food, the medicine, the training for the officers to go out there. When we dealt with a case, this probably was in March too. Everything has happened this month, where 3 dogs got loose and ran 0.2 of a mile from their home into a backyard of another resident and viciously killed this other dog. It's kind of hard to speak of. It's heartbreaking. This pregnant mother, and her 11-year-old child stood on their back porch and watched this. This was horrific. And, she came to us and she said, I did everything right. And we said, you're right, you did. Your dog was current, your dog was chipped, your dog was properly tethered, minding its own business in its own backyard. And these 3 dogs were litter mates, and they were 8 months old. The dog they killed was larger than them. And it was very scary for the entire neighborhood. And when my officers responded, they've got to know how to handle that and how to deal with that. And, that there's a cost in the training to make sure that they can go out and do their job well.
Any other questions? I will accept a motion to take these increases from the Bellwether study and move them on to the full board. That's first by Mrs. Evans. Again, a second Mrs. Parker. Not a roll call. All in favor of moving these on to the full board for consideration? Say aye. Opposed? Thank you, Julie, for increasing your fees. Appreciate that.
Thank you for supporting my proposals. Next on the agenda is something we'll call a multi-pet permit. Over the years, we've talked about pet limits. We often get calls when people come in new to our area. They call us, do you have a pet limit? No, we do not. Some villages and municipalities do. Other counties do. I think Will County has a 3 pet limit throughout their county. And I've approached that subject before with a lot of opposition. Today I come to the committee with a different proposal, a different view on this. One of the other counties that I've worked with over the years have a multi-pet permit. We can certainly recognize that some people can handle many pets and do a wonderful job of it. I can certainly recognize that some people can barely take care of one. I have 4 pets of my own. For myself, my plate is full. My house is full. For others, certainly, they can handle more than 4. So I don't want to come and put a strict limit and tell somebody you're not worthy of carrying or having or loving more than 2 or 3 pets. But to say, if you are that person, we want to make sure that you can properly provide, care for, and maintain animals in a good manner. The situations that we've been dealing with this month only increase the need that I feel is necessary for a multi-pet permit in our county. The information that I have here on this is information very similar to what this other county does. I thought their language was good. I've talked with the state's attorney's office about this county, and many of their ordinances they're very much in favor of. So instead of just reinventing it, I took much of their language, and I have it here for you to review. One of the, on the last paragraph, one of the questions that I have, I guess that I'd like a little guidance from the committee on if we were to accept this multi-pet permit, is that magic number. You'll see that I have it in parentheses and underlined, italics, 5th with a question mark. In this ordinance for them, that says that such license shall be obtained no later than 30 days after assuming ownership of a 5th animal. I think prior to some of the things that I've dealt with this month, I was a little more lenient to think that maybe that could be 8 or 9. I can tell you in the case that we're dealing with that transpired the end of last week, 8 was too much for this person. And I guess I kind of go back and go, maybe they had some good reason to have that number 5, that when they get that 5th animal. I'm not, totally set in stone on that. I guess I'm here to ask for a little bit of guidance and what the committee thinks, if that 5 is a good number, or should we stretch that to 8 or 9? I'd certainly like to keep it under double digits.
Mrs. Evans first, and then Mrs. Dunbar.
Men. But are you able to police this though? I mean, if you are knowing, I know it needs to be, but I guess does this create more of a burden on your office and your staff to, well, I guess it makes you more aware of how many people have, but I don't know. It's just hard. I mean, again, it would be real easy if somebody had a litter and they were able to get rid of the dogs, and maybe they already had 2 or 3 and now they've got an extra 2 or 3 dogs or cats that, that they could not find homes for. So now they have those, and then things just grow and they get out of hand sometimes. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, I guess. But I mean, it's kind of a difficult thing because obviously it needs to be managed and policed, but then that creates a bigger burden, or no, for your office?
It does, but I guess I have to look at, is the burden of going out and trying to be proactive and making sure that the folks that want to handle a larger number of animals are folks that can afford it and have the ability to do that, that have the ability to know when their plate is full. Or is it more of a burden to do what we've done this month and try to pull a rabbit out of our hat and move 100 cats and, deal with 23 animals in an afternoon? That's burden. And without these shelter partners that have been there for us, we'd be up a creek without a paddle. Our euthanasia numbers would skyrocket. And I think the message that I want to take to the community is, I'm not here to say you can't have a higher number of animals, but please show us that you can be responsible with them, keep them in compliance with the law, and maintain them in a good, or not, if not best practice type of manner.
Mrs. Dunbar first, and then Mrs. Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any concept of how many people this would affect in the county, and what kind of resources that's going to take in terms of overtime or staff changes? What's it going to cost?
I don't have a hard number on that. I venture to say there's probably quite a few people. I hope that people will come forward willingly and say, yes, I know, I see your chuckle there. But without something like this, I have no way of knowing, unless a tip from a citizen, such as one that I got involving the case last week, comes into us and we have the ability to act on that. Sometimes we get the tips, but they're so closed in their homes, we have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. If we at least have something like this on the ordinance and we know there's more, this does give us that ability. If they pull the blinds and they lock the doors and they're like, you need to stay out, then we have this ability to go to the state's attorney and say, we need an administrative warrant to go in, and just so that they can be in compliance. It's not a huge expense as far as the cost to them, and we're not trying to be intrusive. We really aren't. I just want to see animals stop suffering in high numbers in homes. And so, yeah, I'm probably not going to know those numbers until we kind of take that lid off and see what's there.
The other part of my question was cost to you in terms of staff time. Do you have any concept of, how this is going to affect your staff budget?
I'm sure we'll be busier, and we'll certainly stay within our allotted hours of the day to do this, and we'll schedule them as we can fit into the day. I do have an officer now that works kind of a second shift, 11 to 7. So there is some opportunity for people that can't be home during the day that we could visit them, and they're not trying to have to take off work. So that gives us a window there where he's not dealing with the daily activities, that he can follow up on some of these things in that 4:30 to 7 o'clock time frame.
Thank you.
Mrs. Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Will this affect those families that are taking in foster from the shelter? Will they have to apply for a permit?
If they fall under, I suppose it could. However, I think that I would be more inclined that if they're meeting the state guidelines and only fostering no more than 4 as what state allows, and they have under the number we choose, then I think they're in compliance with both statutes, and I could see not burdening a foster with that if they
Okay.
were not, if they're trying to maintain and be in compliance of both things, county ordinance and state ordinance, then I wouldn't opt to penalize them for that.
Okay, well, you can put Dave and I down for one of your first permits for rescue people.
Mr. Wheeler and then Mrs. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess for clarification, animals defined as cats and dogs.
Companion animals is generally what animal control in the Humane Care for Animals Act, they consider companion animals. Horses are included in that.
That I appreciate the clarification, because our ordinances only affect the rural areas of the county, not in the municipalities. And I could see somebody having a couple of horses, 4 or 5 dogs, maybe a little small pack, and then some cats. My number is closer to 9, to be honest. If we're only talking about the rural areas of the county, I think that's a fair number for people, and then if they have, I don't know how many horses you can own without it being a horse facility, but
Right. It depends on your acreage.
it does. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we might, if it's, we might want to consider that. I would go for the higher number at 9, because we're only talking about outside of the municipalities in the cities. If they ask us to get involved, they may have a different number on what that is.
Sure.
Yeah.
And some of the villages already have that limit. I believe Bourbonnais may already have a pet limit. And I'm fine to start with 9. And I think that's where my mind was before this month happened.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly we can start there. And if we find that we need to come back and lower that, I suppose we could talk about that and grandfather those that were already in.
Sure. And as a follow-up, I think it's important to know that we're asking people to proactively register, but it really gives us more teeth on the back end if there is a situation that we say we have an ordinance in place. If, the neighbors call or, somebody calls in and say that there's an issue at this particular location. So I hate to say you want it to be proactive and want people to do the right thing, and most people will, like Mrs. Parker, excuse me. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, it is more on the enforcement end as well. So.
It is. And again, when we're enforcing that, we want to make sure and remind the folks, we're not asking you to get rid of any of your pets. We're just asking you to come in compliance with the ordinance and let us know what you have. Make sure they're vaccinated, registered, microchipped. And I mean, it's a $25 initial fee, and then it's just $10 a year. So it's really not, a costly endeavor for them.
Mrs. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to see it put in the paper and asked for public comment on it before we pass anything up to the county board. I think it does need a little bit more thought because it is kind of a complicated thing. And what I don't want to see is some unintended consequences, and I'm not sure what that would be. That's why if we bring it up to the public and somebody has, 80 acres and they have 15 animals on there, are we putting too much on them? Or I'd like some public comment on it. So is there a way we could put something in the paper, put it out on Facebook? I know you have a nice Facebook page, stuff like that, and get some input from some people who do own some animals and what they think about it. That's what I understand where you're coming from, but I think this affects a lot more people than you think. So, and I would, like I said, it's the unintended consequences that I'm worried about. So maybe we could refine it or make it a little more general, depending on what the comments come back. So I'm not in disagreement. I understand, there are problems out there, but I think the majority of people are responsible pet owners.
Mr. Snipes, before I get to the sentence.
I think I think the recommendations to add or amend the ordinance is plausible. However, there are a few things that I would like to get clarity upon. One is when we are up under multiple pet owners license requirement, if we can get that, you have the first sentence, but we use the word his, so it implies gender, but it doesn't say his and hers. And I think either we can remove the his out of that and let it be read, or you have to put his and hers in that first sentence.
Okay.
Okay, in order to make it applicable across the board. The multiple pet owners, I think because I don't want to come back and deal with farmers, and I think when I'm just saying pet owners, individuals are going to look at 4-H and things of this nature, so where they have their pet hog or pet this. So I think there needs to be a distinction between livestock and just pet owners, because someone's hog can be their pet, because that's generally what they are when you get them to 4-H. And then I don't want 4-H individuals to be discouraged or have to come in and screaming that we have now interfered, like Janice said, in their unintentionally in their scope of things. So I'm thinking that we need to refine the language just a tad bit to distinguish livestock from pets, because we said pet owners, then we said companion pets or whatever. So even when we use the word companion, that relationship is there. You know, people have pet snakes, pet iguanas. So I'm saying we can get into a can of worms until we kind of just limit the scope into a certain area. So I do believe that it needs to kind of be a little bit more refined as far as the language is concerned, but it is plausible because I understand what you're trying to do. And we want to help you get there. It's just that at the same time, we have to safeguard the farmers from their livestock versus the pet. And if it's not in there, it can be utilized or construed that way if you want to stretch it, you know, as far as that's concerned. That's what they're going to probably interpret it. So we can do that. I think it'll help.
Mr. Snipes is absolutely right. 4-H you might find that bundle of kids in 4-H where everybody's got a rabbit, you know, and you might have 5 or 6 rabbits. So that, I mean, some definition.
Yeah, and that's why this targets dogs and cats.
Mrs. Evans and then Mr. Wheeler.
I see that there's square footage allowed on the first page for section E for 2 dogs living outside, but you know, I guess it scares me when I hear Andy say 9. I just think, so are there going to be sizes to those, you know, is that, unless I've missed it, I don't know if there's anything that it mentions actual acreage or per how many you have. And then you're defining, you know, then you've got, like you said, horses are also considered in that category. And as far as the 4-H thing, I don't see that would be, I don't see it would be an issue. I mean, we have pigs. They're not household animals, and they're not.
But they could be.
Well, if we had a pot belly, yes. We also have chickens, and they live outside. But we're on, you know, 5 acres, and and those are 4-H animals. The pigs are. So, but I mean, I guess you could get real super specific, but I guess I would be afraid because even though it's rural, just down the road from us, there's homes that are pretty close. So if any of those homes had 9 animals, that would be a lot for those areas. So I don't know. That's kind of,
it's a tricky situation because I know multiple families that have dogs and a few horses, so they'd fall into that line. So, Mr.
Remember,
Wheeler,
this is just saying dogs and cats.
this is just dogs and cats. So horses are excluded.
I mean, horses are a companion animal.
Are they excluded from this ordinance?
They're not in here. You know, they're not written in here.
Okay.
And because horses really go by acreage. And so this really is just targeting dogs and cats.
Right.
So, you know, when I run across that guy that has 100 snakes, I'm going to call Mr. Snipes to help me come and take them out.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was important. I want to clarify that again because it seemed like they got lost before. That is just dogs and cats.
It is just dogs and cats.
And we're looking at, again, the rural areas of the county. I would say that as is, this is, and you say the state's attorney has actually sat with you on this one to look it over?
Yes.
So these are their changes already as far as?
We've previewed this already, and it will go back for final approval from them. But yes, I've sat down with them and talked about all of this information already.
Well, then I'd like to make the motion to make the number 9 and then send it back to the state's attorney for their final look-see and go to the full board.
We have a motion from Mr. Wheeler, a second from Mr. Johnson to move the number from 5 to 9. Do we have any discussion? Oh, Ms. Dunbar.
I just had one other question, not related to 9. That's
Okay.
not the question. I'm sorry. I have a question about number 5, in the first section. Dogs or cats shall be prevented from running at large.
Define
gonna
running
keep-
at large.
Well, I'm thinking of cats specifically on a rural property. I mean, do you want them to fence 5 acres and try to keep a cat inside? It's hurting cats. I just,
You know, our current ordinance right now says if your animal, be it dog, cat,
right,
chicken, is off of your property, and we've been called many times for chickens being off of their property, you're in violation. Your animals need to stay on your property. We have dog owners that are not happy with us when, you know, they've come in before and stated, I have 108 acres. And it's like, but your dog does not know where your acreage ends. For the most part, many days, they can probably run 108 acres. But when they cross that line, they're off their property. So they can certainly be loose. I hope that cats, if you're out on a farm, are not wandering too far off of their land, or they're probably not going to come home. The likelihood that they could get, meet a sad end with a coyote, and that is probably scarier. And
Okay, so we have a voice vote to move this to, well, we're moving it to the state's attorney, and then it'll come back, and maybe we can get some public comment by the time
Actually, the motion is to go to the full board.
go to the full board?
Yes.
Okay. All right, are you fine with that? Is the committee fine with that? So all in favor?
Aye.
Changing it from 5 to 9, and then going to the full board for consideration. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Maybe we can get some discussion, some public comment too, Mrs. Peters, before that. That way we can figure out if this is something the public really wants.
I'm sure a lot of those that have a high number are going to go, no, I don't want anybody, but it's again, I'm not trying to impose on those folks, but without any type of regulation, we're just running into one hot mess after another. So thank you for your discussion on that. And something I hope will be an easier suggestion or proposal is the definition of shelter. In the state statute, under the Humane Care for Animals Act, and this has been a hot button topic in state language, it simply says adequate shelter and protection from the weather. That is so vague. And I cannot tell you the number of times that we've gone to properties where people have complained about an animal that has a picnic table, has a cap to a truck, has barrels or garbage cans. I went to a property many years ago and there were no dog houses outside. And when I went back, they took their in stands from inside their house and put them out there. They're particle board. As soon as it rains, again, these animals aren't going to have the proper shelter that they need. A lot of times they're in, just sitting in mud pits and such. We have the ability in our county to make these laws and these definitions stronger and kinder to the way the animal has to live if it's outside. So I would suggest that we add definition of shelter to our own local ordinance, and that would define 4 sides, a roof, floor, bedding. The shelter is to be a sufficient size to permit such animal to stand up, turn around inside when fully grown, and allow retention of body heat. The shelter shall be placed to provide shade from the sun and protection from the weather. I don't think that it's terribly cumbersome, but yet is going to provide us the ability to ask for correction for someone when we go out and we find animals that have a bush, that have a picnic table, that are sitting in a barrel that's ice cold, and let them know that that's unacceptable for the care of the animal.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the definition of bedding? Is it hay, straw? I mean, what?
Yes, a type of material that wouldn't necessarily freeze. You know, bedding is not blankets. Blankets get wet, they freeze. So bedding would be shavings, hay, straw, something of that nature.
I would ask that you somehow we need to clarify that in what the definition is, and if we do make a change.
Okay.
As just a way, because we have people say, well, yeah, there is bedding in there. Styrofoam peanuts.
Yeah.
Whatever, who knows?
Might not be bad. Styrofoam's very insulating.
Is this the Webster definition of shelter? What is the Webster's definition of shelter?
Oh, I don't know that I
was just wondering if we're redefined. It's 2017 and we're defining shelter. That's
as it pertains to animals. And
maybe
again,
Mrs.
this does not. Livestock are a little bit different. I think your caring good farmers are out there providing protection for their animals. But I'm not going down that path of livestock. This again pertains more so to companion animals. But I do believe horses. I do feel horses are in this category because we oftentimes find horses out there with nothing but a tree to stand under. And I know our veterinarian is very adamant about not having shelter for these animals when they're impounded. One of the court cases that we recently won in regards to a cruelty case on horses was they had no shelter.
Mrs. Weber.
The question is it under this definition that you need a shelter if your animal is outside more than 8 hours in 24, and if it's 30 minutes between 11 p.m.? Is that when you need a shelter, or is it a shelter is needed for every animal?
I don't know that. I think we're just trying to look for a definition of shelter and not saying if your animal is outside specifically at this time. I can tell you that I have a dog house. I guarantee you my dogs have never entered it.
I know.
I'm positive they haven't, but I have one in the back of my yard. I had previous dogs that liked to stay out more. They were of a northern breed, and you know, they did use their dog houses, but they got to come in whenever they chose as well. But we usually tell folks that if we go out there and they say, well, the dog, you know, stays in the house, we just let him out during the day. You need to have a dog house. But I'm just trying to define what shelter is. Yes.
Motion to accept this definition of shelter. Mrs. Evans.
Bedding.
Of bedding. Yeah, that we define bedding within the definition of shelter. All right, I have a first. Can I get a second? Mrs. Parker. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We have redefined shelter.
Okay, two more things. Property update. And I would have updated you last month. I apologize that I couldn't be here. We've been working with an Eagle Scout from Troop 361. They called us and wanted to help us do something. So, you know, we really hate doing anything to the old property because I think it's just, you know, it's not of any purpose. So we went out to the barn and we had some stall panels, we had mats, we had some things that we could work with. So we went out there and we worked on the barn over the latter fall and early part of this year, and their portion of that is now complete. If anybody would ever want to see anything, the new property, the old property, my door is always open. Please call me. I would be more than thrilled to have you visit both shelters so that you know where we're at and where we want to go. and really the potential of what we could truly have and offer the community with the new facility. I often think of that, build it and they will come. I mean, I just think it will offer so much to the community. And we're happy to have the barn as far along as it is. It is not completely renovated. We still have to add additional stalls. It needs proper ventilation, lights, and water, obviously. We are currently still using some private holding facilities, but hope to be able to use the county barn in the near future. One concern is that we're not there on the property every day. So that, you know, if I absolutely had to put something there in a pinch, I probably could. But again, we're not there every day, and it's much easier to maintain and care and go out there and take care of an animal when it's 50 feet away from you as opposed to across town. But we're real happy to have this move along. It kind of gives us a little bit of hope that there's some light to the end of this tunnel. And we have named the barn. There's going to be multiple buildings on the property. So we want to have a little bit of fun with that and give them an identity. And we'll now call this barn County Barn 361 and offer that back to the scout troop that helped us make this happen. And then on that effort of trying to raise this money to get this new shelter, BARC is having a fundraiser May 12th. Please mark your calendars. I would love to see the board members join us and help us support this effort. This is a comedy night. Going to have 3 stand-up comedians. It's going to be good, clean comedy, 16 years and older. As far as the dialogue of that, and it's going to be at the Knights of Columbus. Doors will open at 7, and we were not serving dinner. Certainly, we'll have some snacks. There will be a cash bar. We'll have some raffles, a door prize, some split the pot, some other fun things going on. So we encourage everybody to come and join us. And you know, we in our world need that laughter with all the stress we deal with. So. That's it.
Mr. Tholen.
Thank you, Chairman. This is kind of off topic, but speaking to the new property where the County Barn 361 is, what's the story on the boat?
You want it?
No.
What's the story?
The boat was there in the barn when we gave the property owner, the previous owner, an opportunity to remove whatever they wanted to remove, and he kind of kept dragging his feet, and they left the boat. We don't have a title to the boat. Sheriff said we can sell it without a title, sell it as is. So we needed to get it out of there this winter just so that we could work on the barn. And we will probably pull it around front and put a for sale sign on it.
It's a crocodile recovery boat.
You know, it's an indoor inboard motor. I'm not a boat person.
Inboard motor.
I've
Has
just
a
seen
trailer.
the front of it on the trailer is all, so I don't know any specifics about it.
So, yeah.
I assume that was the case. I just wanted to know. So, thank you.
Anything else for Mrs. Boudreau?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you too, Mrs. Boudreau. Next on the agenda, County Clerk Bruce Clark, a motion to accept his monthly report. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Dunbar, all in favor? All opposed? Report accepted. Morning, Bruce.
Morning. Well, there's no action items, on the agenda, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. Just to recap a few quick things, and I won't take a lot of your time, but the February election was completed. All ran well, no issues. We're preparing for, there's a short window from the February primary because it's 2 weeks when we certify. the election results. So we move right into the April elections. And I think I told you last month, the April election is really a complicated election. It's one of those that can come out and jump at you real quick if you're not on top of things because of the large number of ballot styles, the large number of the complicated connections with the e-poll books in terms of auto precincting. But we're busy preparing that. And today we have classes at KCC for election judges. We'll have classes tonight. We'll have classes tomorrow. We'll have classes Thursday. We'll have classes Saturday. We'll have classes the following Tuesday for election judges. So we're busy recruiting to fill vacancies. We've recruited about 25 high school students. We have a strong program with recruiting high school students and also Olivet students. I will bring next month to you some units, optical scan units. There's about 10 of them and 2 touchscreen that are no longer operating, and so we will condemn those. It's just a reminder that equipment is getting older, and at some point in time we need to be prepared to address that issue. This isn't a Kinky County issue, it's a statewide issue and really nationwide in terms of replacing old aging equipment from 2004. So the cost of repairing those are prohibited. I mean, it opens it up. It's like you open it up and it's $85 to do a diagnostic on it. So in other matters, we are preparing to send out statements of economic interest, frequently called the none statement or the ethics statement. We send out, and actually I brought, Linda has a letter for everybody, but what we, and then maybe the balance, Diane, if you can put them in the mailboxes, is that all right? Or, we probably save about, we've done this for I think this is the 4th year now, where instead of mailing out statements of economic interest, we email them all out. And by doing that, we save, I don't know, $500+ in postage each year. We wrote a program, actually Dan Hendrickson wrote a program to file those online. And generally out of 1,200 statements of economic interest that are emailed out, 2/3 of the people generally file those online. We have about 300 people maybe that come into the office to file. But we do, encourage, we save money by filing those electronically. We've been working on a lot of tax matters. They've occupied a lot of time in the office, including mobile homes that we're spending a lot of time with, preparing information on that. We're prepping for liquor licenses. Those are coming up pretty quick, so we've got some information on that. And I think that's pretty much the extent. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Clark? How do you find out when those polling places or those vote machines aren't working? How do you determine that? Is that normally when something breaks, it's usually being used? I'm just trying to figure out how you figure out that it's broken.
Well, the one of the things that we see a lot of times, mostly, is the readers, the light readers, that when you put the ballot into the tabulator, it won't accept it. Okay. The reader has to see those bars before it starts pulling the ballot through. Those are one of the problems, and if it's a reader, you might as well junk it on the spot. Sometimes you find there are rollers that aren't working, and they kind of get loud. And if a roller is broken, maybe you can replace it. But again, once you open it up, it's $85 just to open it up for diagnostics. A few times we've found, dust, dirt particles, pieces of something into that, and we can fix that. But readers and rollers, I mean, it's a pretty simple machine, but it's, if it breaks, I mean,
All right, I was just
it
wondering.
breaks, yeah.
Put my interest-
Touchscreen units are a little different. A lot of times we're seeing that, and this isn't here, but it's everywhere, there are calibration issues. And we can recalibrate those on the spot on election day, or we can, we do that before we send it out. But the many times for touchscreen, just the tablet, the screen goes bad and it's blank. So we have some of those that we'll bring in. So far, 10 OS units and 2 touchscreen units that we'll bring to you next month to condemn.
Okay. You ever thought about donating those to like a BBCHS has a technology program? Would that be something they could tinker with to try to fix, or would you want somebody tinkering with those things?
Yeah, we generally like to not put those out into the public, you know.
Condemn those. We send those to Russia, do we?
Well, we when we got rid of the lever machines, we did sell those to a New England county that still used them. So we did sell the lever machines.
Anything else for Mr. Clark?
All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Don't forget to get your econ interest if you look like it.
Do I have any old business that needs to come before the committee? Any old business? Any new business that needs to come before the committee? Any new business? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Parker, Mrs. Polk. All in favor? Have a good day, everybody. I had to get you in there, Patricia.